All right, welcome back to Snap Publishing. Those of us familiar with what we do here, and welcome those of you new to Snap Publishing, where we talk about the secrets of Edward Leedskalnin's Coral Castle and how it pertains to the biblical narrative and the periodic table of elements, DNA, and the zodiac. The castle is connected to the periodic table and King Solomon's temple. Here we are going to go step by step on the castle items that you see inside the castle and in the walls. And when you take the aerial view of the castle and you double image the mirror, or mirror image the or double image it, you can morph those in and out of each other and come up with different iterations for different purposes. Each one of them is Edward's way of saying this represents this represents that. And each of these morphings taps into a connection to DNA, the zodiac, the pyramid complex, the periodic table of the elements, and King David / Solomon's temple. And things that you find in the Bible narrative. I'll get into them as we go. This material attempts to nail down an age-old question: who or what is the devil? And you say, well, you know, it's speculative. No, it's not. It's definitive. It's easy to point and say, this right here is the great Satan. America is not the great Satan. Israel is not the great Satan. And Islam isn't even the great Satan, believe it or not. Okay? None of those qualify. There is actually something that can be pointed to and definitively stated as representing pure evil. And we'll get into it. Okay? So, one of the main focuses on this work is to end this debate that people recently have put out on social media that, oh, Jesus and Lucifer are the same person, cleverly disguised. Wrong. This material ends that discussion today. I mean, I don't even know how to express how wrong that theory has been throughout time, and many have fallen victim to that lie. It's a very subtle lie. There's very close things in the Bible narrative, but we're going to move on. We'll get to the meat and potatoes of that as we go on. So we're going to get into the mystery of solving the mystery of why were the three pyramids in Giza created. What do they represent? We're going to tap into something that I stumbled upon when I realized Edward was pointing me in a direction, or all of us in a direction, saying, hey, my castle represents other things. And that other thing was the periodic table. And I stumbled upon a connection to the fine structure constant of the universe. That's when you take the number 1, divide it 138 times, and you come up with the approximate atomic weight of hydrogen. It's not the atomic weight. It's very close. So, and we get into why that is. We're going to tap into Jacob or Israel or Yahub blessing his 12 children on his deathbed. We get into the two giants of the Bible, the most famous ones, Goliath and the metal man that King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream about that Daniel had to interpret for him. We're going to tap into Jesus. Did he actually die a physical death? Did he go to the lowest depths of hell or the Greek underworld? Or, you know, that's the Protestant viewpoint. And the Roman Catholics correct, where they say, no, he did not go to the full depths. He went into purgatory. Or some people call it purgatory. So we're going to tap into that. We tap into the two strange mythical beings from Job chapter 41. Leviathan and Behemoth, which are depicted in Edward's iterations of his castle. There's one image I call the Behemoth and Leviathan image. I'll go over right now what the different iterations of Ed's castle are. But let's go over the items that are found in the castle. The Feast of Love table, Florida table, sunbathing table, the 3, 6, and 9 of the 3-ton door, 6-ton door, and the Polaris telescope, which represents the 9. We'll get into what those 3, 6, and 9 represent. The workshop tools, basic tools of a carpenter, saw, chisel, and brace and bit, which is a drill. And his rotary switch that you see pictures of him spinning. The section in the central area courtyard called Grotto of the Three Bears, which he said represented the storyline to Goldilocks and the Three Bears. There's a sundial, which I call the Analemma calendar, and the lookout slots that you notice in the walls. And there's what's called the moon fountain. And a very intelligent man, Mr. Russell, explains how that table actually represents the rotary switch that Edward worked with. And then there's the eastern side obelisk, and that is dedicated to Seclis or Seclis. That is a Latvian mythical god. And we're going to answer why when people say, well, isn't that Venus? The people from that area, Eastern Europe, say no, it is not. It's very close, but it is not Venus, and we can tap into why that is. I'm going to get into why Edward chose to put Mars, Saturn, and the crescent moon up on the wall. And we're going to tap into things in the Bible that occurred up on walls, city walls. One of them is the harlot or prostitute Rahab. And Rahab harbored the spies for Joshua and the Hebrews on their way into the promised land. And because she helped these spies so that they could successfully attack the city, they promised that they would spare her and her family. So the sign was that she would let a crimson cord down off the wall so that Joshua would tell the people attacking, don't hurt her or her family. Anyone in that house is safe. So, and then there's the woman of Shunem, or the Shunammite, and I call her the old lady who lived in the shoe. And she helped Elisha, and she built him a room on a wall, or upon the wall. And that room had a table, a stool, and a candlestick. These things, to this day, nobody can really explain definitively what those represent. The different iterations of Ed's castle in the graphic forms that I've come up with is the one I call Leviathan Behemoth, I already stated earlier. The Tower of Buddha. There's an image of Buddha in a cross-legged position, but it's a female Buddha. She's nursing a lamb on each side, which represents the Lamb of God. And that Tower of Buddha is, like I say, Edward wasn't just saying, hey, this pertains to Christianity alone or Judaism alone. It taps into the Greek legends, the Enuma Elish, the Buddhists and Hindus. It covers the whole enchilada, and there's a reason for that. There's a very specific reason Edward brings out that is extremely important, because today we hear people saying, oh, you know, the Hebrews, they stole from the Enuma Elish. Nobody stole anything, and we cover why that is. There's a iteration called I call it the Ark of the Covenant iteration as another graphic, and then there's one that is either Cancer, Scorpio, or Taurus the Bull, or all three. I believe it's an amalgamation of all three, and there's a reason for that. There's one that has the symbol for Pisces on a table. That's Jesus in the Last Supper. So the final one is Libra, or Jacob blessing Ephraim and Manasseh. And I'll get into why Jacob crossed his hands, okay, and who Ephraim and Manasseh represent. And you're going to feel silly when I explain it, because once I realized what it was, I was like, man, how did we miss this? It's that simple. So the way I came to the understanding of all these things, the timeline and the sequence of events, was I realized what Edward was saying when he said, hey, in this book in every home, He's saying the things in this castle are found in the Bible. If you're a Hindu, they're found in the Vedic text. If you're Sumerian, it's found in the Enuma Elish. If you're European, it's found in the northwestern legends that what's his name, Lord of the Rings author J.R. Tolkien covered. All the material that's in the book Hamlet's Mill, really deep subject matter in Hamlet's Mill, very good book. But Edward is saying no matter where you were from in the world, you had the same source code. That same source code is the periodic table. They all had access to it. And they all understood also, they had a astronomical understanding of DNA. They knew what DNA was, but they figured it out through different means than we did. And they may not all have understood it at the genetic level, but we'll get into that. And I realized Edward's castle was the periodic table. One day I realized, hey, wait a minute, if I double imaged the periodic table the way I did Ed's castle, and I stared at it for a little bit and finally realized, oh, I know what I'm looking at. That's the floor plan for King Solomon's temple. So you hear the legend of King Solomon's mines. Ooh, the mystery of it's not King Solomon's mines. It's King Solomon's mind. That is what this is all about. So I began to realize certain things about the temple, and it tapped into some really deep things, like the porch. The temple had a porch that was before it with the two pillars, and that P or CH represents phosphate or sugar phosphate. That's what it represents. This right here, this would represent the two pillars before, and this is your DNA strand. Okay, so your P or CH, the P would be the white, and the CH, which is sugar. So that's your sugar phosphate. They call this the backbone. Okay, and these are your ATGC codes. So I began to realize that, man, they had an advanced understanding of genetics, or, DNA. And that's where the tribe of Dan comes in. They are the tribe of DNA. Daniel. Daniel means DNA of God. And we get into all of that. So the mysterious Egyptian Jed pillar, DJED, Jed pillar, that's Jachin and Boaz, the two pillars before the temple when you walked in, which stands for your shin bones. Okay, we'll get into why that is. We get into why I put the furnishings in the temple graphic the way I did. One iteration is with the Ark of the Covenant and the altar of incense down on the eastern side, which is not where it was located. And then I have it on the western side, which is where it would have been located in the actual temple. And I have a depiction of the Great Pyramid, which would be the stone David's sunk into Goliath's head, because the temple works both ways. It represents a matriarchy and a patriarchy. So you see it with the Great Pyramid lodged in its forehead. David took out 5 smooth stones, meaning the 5 Platonic solids. So he sunk an octahedron, which is the Great Pyramid, into the skull of, if you look at Africa, it's a skull, and that's where the Great Pyramid's located. People say the pineal gland, that the Great Pyramid represents the pineal gland. Well, there's more to the 3 pyramids, and also they're the Orion's belt. There's more to it. That's not the end. There's a lot more meat on that bone. So anyway, we're going to get into the times that the number 3, 6, and 9 appears, okay, and that gets into the belt stars of Orion, the 3 pyramids, okay. The pyramid we're titling the Great Pyramid is not the Great Pyramid. It's the once Great Pyramid. It actually represents the devil. It represents the Great Satan. So when you hear Muslims saying, "Oh, the Great Satan," they're wrong. If they're saying America is the Great Satan, the Great Satan is the Great Pyramid. And the 3 pyramids represent the center, which is carbon. And one side or the other represents either the fluorine or the lithium. Okay? And we'll get into why that flip-flops. The C, the carbon, represents Jesus hanging on the cross between the 2 thieves. We'll get into why that is. But this 369 trio make their appearances over and over and over again. Daniel had his 3 friends. Noah had his 3 sons. It just keeps showing up over and over and over again. Well, it represents lithium, carbon, and fluorine. It represents a 3, 6, and 9. It represents a triangle. That triangle represents your North Pole and your South Pole. Okay, it represents an axle that a wheel spins on. Okay, and it shows itself again with niobium, molybdenum, and technetium. And then one more time with praseodymium, neodymium, and promethium. So now we get into technetium and promethium, why they're not found. The only 96 elements that only 2 of the 96 natural elements that aren't found naturally. Why is that? Because they're the olive trees that stand before God's throne. They're in heaven. They're not on earth. Okay? And this also answers a question. Why did Enoch, why didn't Enoch appear during Jesus' transfiguration on Mount Hermon? It was Moses and Elijah. It should have been Enoch and Elijah. Where did Moses come in? There's a reason. Okay, we answer that question. The fine structure constant, when this hit me, I felt so silly. I'm like, I cannot believe I never noticed that before. But FSC, fine structure constant, the 3 building materials of the temple, discounting the gold and the silver. There was fir, cedar, and stone. Fir is fluorine, cedar, stone is lithium, lithos is Greek for stone, F, S, and the C is cedar. Okay? So if you get into the books of Samuel, 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, the Kings, it talks about the life of David. Well, David's spies were hiding in a well a man had in his courtyard. And the man put things over the well so that the people come and looking for where'd those men go? I don't know. They went that way. They were hiding in this well. Where was that well? Bahurim. If you look at your periodic table, and this is one of the ways I figured out the periodic table is Solomon's temple, is I saw barium and there was the lanthanide and actinide series. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's the well at Bahurim. And that's where the spies hide. Who are the spies? The most famous spy in the world is who? 007. What's the approximate atomic weight of hydrogen? 007. This material taps into an ongoing work in progress that I have where I took the Greek zodiac and I put biblical characters around it. And some of them were easy beans, dead giveaway, easy. The first 4 were a no-brainer. The rest are very difficult, and that's why when that graphic goes on sale on my website, it's going to be substantially less to buy that one than all the others, because that one I don't want to charge too much because it's going to be changed eventually. It's a work in progress. I'm not quite happy with everything, and greater minds than me or mine are going to come along and say, hey, you're a little off over here, and here's why. And we're going to talk reason. We're going to talk shop, and I'm guarantee you somebody's going to point something out. I'm going to go, you know what? You're right. So the way I have it depicted, that's going to change. But anyway, we're going to get into just the minutia of the zodiac itself. And, it's pretty self-explanatory when you look at it. I began to realize, man, this is a lot easier when you explain things to children. Like when I was a dad, my son was asking me questions. I didn't have answers to them. I felt stupid. But now I have a grasp on things that I just never had before, because I realized the Bible simplifies things that schools have really made difficult for young minds to understand. Like the 4 forces are the 4 rivers of Eden. And those are the 4 cardinal points. Okay, the name Zeus is Neus. That's north, east, west, and south. That U is, you just double it, right? And you get Ne, and then N turns. That's where the name Nebuchadnezzar comes from. Nebuchadnezzar represents the old setup that the solar system had, where it's different today. The rocky planets were not where they're located now. When Lucifer fell, he changed not only the solar system, but he changed the periodic table. If you know, the D block elements expanded. That gap in there is the Pacific Ocean. And everything went into catastrophic meltdown. And in essence, what the Great Pyramid did is it got the Earth pregnant. It put the resonant frequency of hydrogen inside the Earth, and it cracked the Earth. And the Earth was a moon of Saturn or Jupiter or both. And we ended up going to our current location today. The rocky planets are an anomaly. They don't belong where they are. And the solar system used to be all gas giants. And there's several sections in the Bible narrative, where it gets into this. The battle of the four kings versus 5 in Genesis that Abraham had to fight. That is talking about an astronomical event between the gas giants, okay, and the rocky planets, okay. The 4 is obviously Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune versus who? Well, you got Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. That's only 4. Our moon. Our moon is considered one of them. So you say, well, where's the sun in that? And it gets into that. That battle talks about the slime pits. And Sodom and Gomorrah is a form of our sun, sodium and gamma ray. That tar pit that these people got trapped in is talking about when the rocky planets came to their current location. They got stuck in this tar trap. That's the sun's. In other words, when Lucifer said, I will put my star above the stars of God, okay, he became Polaris, or it became Polaris, okay? That's the pole star is the P or N star. It's a porn star. That is literally what that means. Lucifer became a porn star, got the earth knocked up. The earth cracked and split open, and you can't make this stuff up. I'm telling you that this is actually step by step by step what happened if you read the Bible scientifically. And it's hard to believe it's that simple, but it's true. You look at the 4 rivers of Eden, Pison, Gihon, Hiddekel, and Euphrates. Pison, the Pison is fission, okay? So you got always opposites. If you got an Adam, you're going to have an Eve. So you got Pison. Gihon is gravity. That's west, all right? So that leaves the Hiddekel, which is Eve. And then you got the Euphrates, which is east, which is Ephraim. Ephraim and Manasseh are opposites, east and west. Take the M of Manasseh and flip it. So I don't want to really bog down into the minutia. I'm just going to get into the main iterations of Edward's Castle and how that carried into other areas that just blew my mind. I had no idea. And I never set out to solve Edward's Castle. I was more interested in figuring out what the Song of Solomon was about. It was just such a strange poem. And when I solved for the one, all these dominoes began to fall. Once you figure it out, the dominoes all just go tickety, 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 tickety. And you're just like, I cannot believe how these things are all connected. They are. So I could get into the details on how each character in the Zodiac came to be. But I don't want to cover that. I just want to point out that that is the general flow chart of events on how I came to this material and was able to bring it to you. But a key thing I'll bring out in the Zodiac, according to the Bible, is how people have tried to put Jacob's 12 sons in there and failed because they tried to use 12 boys. The 2 of the boys are twins. That's the Gemini twins. That's Simeon and Levi. And they actually represent Behemoth and Leviathan. So if you remove one of the sons, now you got a vacancy. That's Jacob's daughter. This is where a lot of people left at Albuquerque. And she actually represents Greek Diana. And if you read Acts 19, verse 24 through 35, Paul missed a great opportunity because Diana of the Greeks is Dinah. And there was a whole ruckus. And Paul could have easily, with one little finger, said, hey, slow down. You guys can keep making your trinkets, even though he would have been against it. Because your system carries over into our system. They come from the same source code. Okay, so anyway, I just want to bring that one last little tidbit out about the the Genesis chapter 49 zodiac. I'm going to leave it right there for now, and we'll get into all the claims I just made that you're like, there's no way he can back any of these claims up. In the next episodes, you're going to see each one of those broken down step by step by step. And I hopefully, my goal here is to make you a believer and to understand that you can easily blend the biblical narrative to modern science and modern Cartesian mathematics, north, south, rather X, Y, and Z. They're all connected. And for many, many decades, for many centuries, academics have booed the Bible, when in fact the Bible is, or the Torah, all these epic poems and national identity, spiritual holy books had the same source code. And that is where those countries' languages, our English language, came from those very sources. So to say they're not scientific is a real slap in the face, because that is the language you speak. And that's why that you look at the Bible narrative, it's tweaked and it's so strange. And that's because they can get away with that, because the language and the letters, the letter A represents the Great Pyramid. It represents the number one. And technically that is wrong. It should not represent the number one. And now today, with computer programmers doing their thing, I'm going to point out why we need to stop identifying certain things with a 1 and certain things with a 0. And I want to correct mathematicians for saying 0 is undefined. That's actually very wrong. And I'll get into that, why that is. But I just want to leave you with a thank you for tuning in. And we'll get back to you on the next episode with all the claims that I just made.